As we continue working through the book of 1 Samuel, in this passage, we're going to look at faith. Hebrews 11:1 defines faith like this. Now, faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. We're going to look in this passage, what does faith look like? What exactly does it look like when somebody's demonstrating great faith in the Lord? And I want you to pay attention. Who showed faith and who didn't? And how do you know? As you see things, put them in the comments so I know that you're with me. All right? Don't forget in the comments.
Hi friends, I'm Miss Nancy Ruth.
And I'm Mr. Roger.
We want to see kids living for Jesus.
All right, so here we go. At this point, Saul is the king of Israel, and it's a united kingdom. Everybody's all together. And there's right at the beginning of chapter 13, there's what's done in Hebrew storytelling to kind of make a break and divide sections. And it's this summary statement that says Saul was 30 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 42 years. And we can add that up and know that he was 72 when he died. All right, so here we go. That's the beginning of the story, the bookmark that says, here we go, praise yourselves, we've got a new episode happening. So the Philistines were a pain in the side of Israel. There were all kinds of battles going on with the Philistines. And Saul gathered up 3,000 soldiers, and he had 2,000 soldiers with him, and he was stationed there in Gibeah, and he had 1,000 soldiers stationed with his son Jonathan, who was stationed in Geba, Benjamin, there's 2 Gebas. And then the rest of the men that he had mustered, he sent them on home kind of as reserve. They were the reserve military. Okay, so Jonathan went and he attacked the Philistines. They had an outpost there in Geba. An outpost means, if you're not a military person, it means when one country or nation has kind of like a fortress or a stronghold in the middle of another country that they're kind of controlling or, overseeing and that kind of thing. So that's an outpost. So the Philistines had an outpost there in Geba of Benjamin. And Jonathan went up and attacked it with his men. And the Philistines heard about it and they were not happy, as you can't imagine. And so the Philistines rallied for battle, and Saul sent the horn to blow all throughout Israel to call up the reserve troops that he had sent home, and everybody showed up ready for battle. Okay, they were all gathered there in Gilgal. That's where all the troops mustered, and the Philistines came, and they were going to battle with them there. And the Philistines came, and boy, they came in force. They had all kinds of chariots, which were kind of like ancient tanks. They had tons and tons of soldiers, and Philistines had a lot, and the Israelites did not have a lot. So they were there in Michmash, which is spelled 2 different ways. Okay, so they had this battle in Michmash, and the Israelites saw this is not going well. They made a hasty retreat, and they hid in the caves there near Michmash and Geba. And Saul, though, was not in the battle. He was hanging out in Gilgal, kind of waiting for word as to what was going to happen. And Samuel, after all this happened, Samuel had told Saul, I'm going to come in 7 days, and I'm going to make a sacrifice, and we're going to ask the Lord's favor on this battle. And so 7 days, I'm going to come make this sacrifice. So they waited, and they nervously watched the Philistines. And they waited some more. Then the people were getting really nervous, and they waited some more. And some people couldn't take it anymore, the pressure, and they hightailed it out of there and snuck out. And Saul saw this, and on the 7th day, he's like, okay, look, Samuel's not here, and the troops are disappearing out from under my nose, and we got to do something, and I can't wait for Samuel. I got to do something. Here's the thing. He forgot. Saul forgot God always keeps his promises, always. And Samuel spoke for the Lord. He was a prophet, and he listened to the Lord and did what the Lord said, and what he told the people was the word that the Lord had given him to give to the people. And so when Samuel told Saul, I'm coming in 7 days to ask the Lord's favor, make a sacrifice and ask the Lord's favor on this battle, that was the Lord speaking to Saul through Samuel. Samuel speaking the Lord's words to Saul. There we go. Saul the king forgot that God always keeps his promises. Saul should have known that Samuel was coming on that seventh day. He was going to offer sacrifices, going to ask the Lord's favor, and the Lord would provide for his people like he had done way back. Saul forgot. And he said, I can't wait anymore. This is awful. I can't. My troops are disappearing. I don't know what to do. So he didn't listen. Instead, he offered the sacrifice. He's a king. He's not a priest. He's not a prophet. He wasn't supposed to do that. That was a sin. That was not good. And in fact, as soon as he finished, Samuel shows up. Oh my goodness. Talk about being caught red-handed. And Samuel says, what did you do? Seriously, what did you just do? And Saul said, quick backpedal. He said, the troops are disappearing and we've got this thing and I couldn't wait for you any longer. I just had to do it. It was my fault. I had to. Did he have to? No, he didn't. He should have trusted that God always keeps his promises. Samuel, I could just see him shaking his head and rolling his eyes. And he had just told Saul not that long ago, like we talked about last week, warning him to follow the Lord and not to turn to the right or the left, but to be obedient and follow the Lord, not get distracted. What's the first thing Saul did? He got distracted and didn't follow the Lord. And Samuel had some bad news for the king. He said, if you had listened, if you had obeyed like I told you, the Lord said to do, I would have established your family on the throne for generations and generations and generations. And because you didn't, remember, God takes sin seriously. Because you didn't, and you rebelled against the Lord, and you did your own thing, God is going to put you aside. You're no longer going to be king. He's going to choose a man after his own heart to be king after you, not one of your descendants like is the custom. Nope. God is rejecting you, and God's going to choose somebody else. And then Samuel left. He didn't offer the sacrifices. He didn't ask for the Lord's favor. He just left. Yikes. Well, the Lord had not completely abandoned the people of Israel. There were still 600 soldiers left. And the other complication is there was no blacksmith in the land of Israel because the Philistines wanted to keep them from rebelling. So the blacksmith would make things like farming tools and fix things like that, but they also could make weapons like swords and spears. And that's what the Philistines didn't want them to do. So the only people who had swords, the only people who were properly armed were the King Saul and his son Jonathan. Nobody else had swords, nobody else had spears. But remember, when the Lord's hand is in it, amazing things can happen. Even with the 600 soldiers, even with the 2 people armed. So, what do you think is going to happen? Let me know in the comments. Do you think Israel is going to be victorious over the Philistine force? Or do you think they're going to have another nasty defeat? Let's find out. So, we have this face-off here in Geba and Michmash. And there were some cliffs there between the two. One was on each hill. And there were these cliffs with this big gorge in between. And Jonathan's looking at this, and he's talking to his armor bearer, his butt pal in arms there, and he says, you know what? I think we can scale those cliffs, go down and back up again, up to where the Philistines have their camp. And then Jonathan said, perhaps the Lord will act on our behalf. Nothing can hinder the Lord from saving, whether by many or by few. Is that demonstrating faith? Let me know in the comments. All right, so armor bearer said, cool, man, whatever, I'm behind you, 100% I'm behind you. Okay. So they did. They scaled the cliffs down and scaled the cliffs back up again. And Jonathan had a plan, and this was his plan. He said, okay, when we get close, like not within firing distance, but close enough, we're going to show ourselves. We're going to let them see us. All right. And if they say halt, and they come after us with a bunch of weapons and things, and they say freeze or whatever, and the guard jumps up, then we'll know, okay, the Lord's not in this, and we'll backtrack, we'll get out of there. Okay, but if they say, come on up, we will take that to mean that the Lord is with us and will give us victory. So, you in? And they said, okay, here we go. Just the two of them. And the two of them were the only ones who knew about this plan. And they snuck out of camp without anybody seeing them. And they scaled those cliffs. And when they got there, they showed themselves to the Philistines. And the Philistines said, look! The Israelites are coming out of their hidey holes. And they said, come on up here and we'll give you a whooping. We'll show you who's boss. You know what? In the face of all that scorn, in the face of all that laughter, that taunting, all that stuff, Jonathan was excited. He said, come up after me. The Lord has given them into the hand of Israel. Remember what he said? If they say, come on up, then the Lord is with us and we got this. So they're taunting, saying, come on up here. We'll give you a whooping you won't believe. And instead, Jonathan said, come on, we got victory in this. So he and his armor bearer went up, and boy, God was really with them. They killed a whole bunch of people there, and terror struck the camp, and all the Philistines were freaking out, like, what's going on? And it was just mass chaos because the Lord was with them. And there in Gibeah, where Saul had retreated to, one of the lookouts said, hey, there's something going on in that camp over there. And they said, what do you mean? I thought everybody was here. Who's missing? Who could have started this? And so they went through and looked and found out Jonathan was missing. And that's when they found out they were gone. And so they said, okay. Well, there was a bunch of chaos in the Israelite camp and a bunch of weird things happened and trying to figure out what to do. And finally they said, let's just go. They went and they joined the battle. And on that day, because of what Jonathan and his armor bearer did, the Lord saved Israel. Now, for some of you, you might spot a problem in this, and it wasn't just that the people were tired from battle at this point, because they just fought a whole, army versus army battle is exhausting. In addition to that, there was another complication. So King Saul had said, cursed be anyone who eats food before evening comes, before I have avenged myself on my enemies. You hear all those my's? You see anything mention of the Lord there? No. And this is Saul's attempt to control the situation, to play God himself, to be the one in charge and in control. You'd think he'd learn, but he keeps messing this up. All right, so he puts everybody under this oath that they will not touch or eat any food before evening because he wants this battle to go well. He thinks instead of offering a sacrifice and seeking the Lord's favor, he can have the same outcome this way. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. So the people are going through the forest, and they weren't walking, but I couldn't find a good running picture. So they're running through the forest, pursuing the Philistines who are going on ahead of them in retreat back to Philistia. And they see some honeycomb. They see some honey on the ground. Oh my goodness, it looks amazing. But they don't dare touch it because of this oath, this promise that they made before God. They would not touch any food before evening. So they're exhausted and they're so hungry, and they have to walk by this honey. Oh my goodness, as they're trying to keep going and pursue the Philistines. Well, Jonathan didn't know anything about this, okay? He wasn't there when they issued this order. Maybe Saul did that while he was off, stirring up trouble. But he dipped his staff into the honey and had some. And it worked kind of like a power drink, one of those electrolyte type things. It gave him a boost of energy. And scripture says it this way: his eyes brightened. That means he had a renewed burst of energy because of this honey. And the people next to him, he's the king's son, so they don't dare really criticism. But they said, your dad said we weren't allowed to eat anything until evening, and he put us all under this oath. And Jonathan said, oh, my father has made trouble for the country. See how my eyes have brightened when I tasted a little of this honey? How much better it would have been if the men had eaten today some of their plunder which they took from their enemies. Would not the slaughter of the enemies have been even greater? And this isn't about killing people. This is about driving out the enemies of the Lord's people. All right. So the people were exhausted and starving by the time they'd finished getting the Philistines out of the area. And then all the provisions and things and such that the Philistines had left behind, they fell on that. They were starving, so they were eating like crazy. And in fact, they were being really rude and actually kind of they were sinning in how they were just diving into this food. It was wow. And Saul said, wait, time out. And he quickly set up a place to butcher the meat so that they could prepare it properly and not sin and be all gross and disgusting. And that was the first time that Saul built an altar to the Lord. And this is telling in and of itself, because building an altar to the Lord has been a way to worship him since at least the days of Abraham. And Saul hadn't done it till this point. What does that say about his heart? What does that say about his faith? All right. And like I said, it's a tradition that Saul finally was getting on board with, but I don't know if it was for the right reasons. But then Saul said, aha, now that we've eaten, what do you say we go and kick the Philistines while they're down? Huh? And the people are like, we're in, we'll follow you, whatever you want to do. But one of the priests said, wait, time out. Let's see what the Lord says about this first. Smart man. All right. So Saul prayed and said, Lord, what do you want us to do? Should we pursue the Philistines or not? There was no answer. So they figured there must be a sin in the camp. Set up the court. Let's figure out who sinned, who messed up here. I find this ironic that Saul is doing this. Okay, and Saul said, we're gonna find who this person is who sinned, and this person is gonna die. Very enthusiastic. Okay, so they set up this court, and there's not just people trying to tell on people, but they're actually seeking the Lord. Okay, Lord, who is it that sinned? And finally, the finger was pointed at Jonathan. Oh no, the king's son. And the king had said he's going to kill whoever it was that sinned. And Jonathan had sinned by eating that food, even though he didn't know about the oaths, because Saul had put all the people under the oath. Remember, they weren't supposed to eat anything. And look at this. Saul said to Jonathan, tell me what you've done. And Jonathan said, I tasted a little honey with the end of my staff, and now I must die. Was he making excuses? Nah. Was he begging for his life? No. Was he doing anything to try to get out of this? No. He was confident that he had done what was pleasing in the Lord's sight. He was confident that he had done what was pleasing in the Lord's sight. And he says, I'll take whatever the consequences, because I know in my heart I am right before the Lord. I find this really interesting. How many of us would have that courage to stand up and say, yeah, I did that, and I know I'm right before the Lord. Do your worst. Jonathan put up with a lot this day, didn't he? Okay, so in the end, the people came and they saved Jonathan's life. They said, oh, no, you don't need to kill him. Look, he was the hero of this whole battle. He's the one that got it started, and they saved his life. And Saul relented. But they did not pursue the Philistines. They let the Philistines go back to their land, and that's okay. And then we have another Hebrew storytelling kind of bookending. This is the end of this episode, and they kind of give another summary statement. So it says, after Saul had assumed rule over Israel, he fought against their enemies on every side. Wherever he turned, he inflicted punishment on them. He fought valiantly and defeated, I need to say which group he defeated. Hold on, because they weren't all defeated. This particular one, he defeated the Amalekites, delivering Israel from their hands of those who had plundered them. So the Amalekites were no longer a problem. But, we'll come back to that. It says later that the Philistines were still a problem in the land of Israel. All right, so after that, continuing our summary statements, it lists a short genealogy of Saul's family, the most important of which that's going to come up later is Abner. Abner was Saul's uncle, and he became the commander-in-chief of the army. He was the head guy in charge of the army. So Abner's an important one. And there's a fulfillment of what God said would happen in 1 Samuel 12 when the people asked for a king, demanded a king. It says, all the days of Saul, there was bitter war with the Philistines. And whenever Saul, that's hard to say. I'll say that 5 times fast. Whenever Saul saw a mighty or brave man, he took him into his service. Just like God had told the people a king would do, the brave men would be conscripted into the military. So, long account, but really interesting stuff in there. I want to know who showed faith and who didn't. And how do you know? What does that faith look like? Then I want to know in the comments, what's one thing you can do to step boldly out in faith this week? It could be bold to talking to somebody that you're not sure if you should talk to, but the Lord's putting on your heart. Go talk to that person. It could be standing up for what is right when it's not going to be popular. It could be taking a big step that you're afraid of, but you know the Lord is leading you there. What is one thing you can do this week to step out in faith? Let me know in the comments. And you can learn more about faith in this video.
Don't forget to subscribe. We post memory verses in 4 translations, key passages, answers to Bible questions, and more. Check out our store and freebies at parentroadmin.com. We love you, friends. See you next time.